Hi, I'm Ashley Sunderland,
And I'm Jess Clark.
and our article is on entrepreneurial intention constraint model, a comparative analysis amongst postgraduate management students in India, Singapore, and Malaysia. So the motivation of the article is to, quote, place more emphasis on understanding the combined effect of contextual and situational factors, along with support of the university environment on the formation of entrepreneurial intention amongst students. So the purpose of the article is to quote, derive and test a mathematical model to relate the criterion variable, namely the entrepreneurial intention, to the predictors, which are the attitude towards behaviour, perceived social norm, perceived behavioural control, exogenous environment, endogenous barriers, and university environment and support. So in other words, the research seeks to understand the influence of 6 factors on the entrepreneurial intention amongst management students.
The research aims to understand which factors influence entrepreneurial intentions, namely, these factors are attitude towards behaviour, perceived social norms, perceived behavioural control, endogenous environment, exogenous environment, and university environment and support. Endogenous environment barriers relates to personal characteristics and shortcomings and individual weaknesses in financial and operational management, which negatively affects entrepreneurial intention. And exogenous environment barriers are related to political, economic, social, financial, and infrastructural factors which positively affects entrepreneurial intention. How they aim to answer these questions is to test the 11 hypotheses, as you can see on the screen. As you can see, the research questions are embedded into the hypothesis questions, and we have uploaded a copy of our PowerPoint slides for your reference. As you can see, there are a few key factors that directly relate to entrepreneurial intention and other factors that have an interrelationship with each other. This diagram illustrates how each factor positively or negatively influences one another and which hypothesis questions they relate to.
The article mentioned that convenience sampling was deemed appropriate for this survey because it was intended to test the relationship variables, not provide point estimates. Additionally, the nominated model, which includes the influence of attitude towards behaviour, perceived social norms, perceived behavioural control, endogenous barriers, exogenous environment, and university environment and support on the development of entrepreneurial intention, is consistent with the theory of planned behaviour mentioned in the article. Furthermore, the sample size was deemed using structural equation modelling, which recommended a minimum of 5 observations per independent variable and the desired number of 15 to 20 observations. We did not think that this sample size were big enough to be representative of the population, especially since India has such a large population and the sample size was only 526 students. Additionally, the smaller sample size may not effectively capture the cultural diversity in the surveyed countries. For example, Malaysia, which fosters many ethnic groups and religions. Therefore, our opinion is that the larger sample size would be needed to ensure each ethnic group and religion is represented in order for the results of the sample to be a true representation of the population. Also, we viewed the changing questions after the pilot survey to be a positive because the questions were adjusted to be a better fit and ineffective questions were removed. The distribution of the survey via the internet was also seen appropriate because the large target population were students who would typically have access to the internet. The data from the survey was collected from respondents who remained anonymous, which in our view allowed for more truthful data to be collected. If students had to be identified for the survey, the true data may be skewed or compromised.
In regards to question 3, the data collected and its associated outcomes mentioned in the article were part of a study designed to test the relationship between various factors influencing entrepreneurial intention among postgraduate management students in India, Malaysia, and Singapore. A structured survey was used to test the hypothesis previously mentioned. Quantitative data was collected in a 5-point Likert scale from the anonymous respondents, which would either prove or disprove the hypothesis, therefore answering the research question. Firstly, a pilot study was conducted for which a preliminary version of the structured survey was issued. This was administered to a random sample of 25 Indian students and 15 Malaysian students, which was done via the internet. The reviewed survey was convenience sampling to gather respondents which was administered via the internet and face-to-face, involving 526 from India, 319 from Malaysia, and 252 from Singapore, totaling 1,097 students. As the data was taken from a cross-section survey, the R-squared value of 0.642 highlights that the factors have a significant influence on entrepreneurial intentions. The diagram exhibits the attitude toward behaviour and perceived behavioural controls, factors that had the most prominent effect on determining entrepreneurial intention. Although the survey outcomes did not show a high correlation between university environment and support, entrepreneurial intention, our observations at Inti College in Malaysia suggest that this may potentially change. The first speaker, Jesus, mentioned that Inti attempts to bring employers into the classroom, students into the boardroom, lecturers on to industry, and alumni onto campus, which has resulted in a high employability of its students. However, fostering this learning collaboration may produce entrepreneurial intention among its students.
The Global Entrepreneurship Index ranks 64 countries on entrepreneurial activity, aspiration, and attitude, in which India, Singapore, and Malaysia rank 48th, 20th, and 32nd, respectively. We found this interesting as you would initially expect that Singapore is a more saturated market than, say, India, which is more than 2 times lower on the Global Entrepreneurship Index. However, this can potentially be explained that one of the outcomes of the study is that the university environment and support has a significant positive relationship with attitude towards behaviour only in Singapore. This suggests that education institutions may deliver knowledge that complements entrepreneurial intentions.
The future avenues of research related to entrepreneurial intention can be explored by improving the R-squared value, which is currently 0.642, or in other words, what other factors affect entrepreneurial intention not currently captured? For example, how does migration or student exchange play a role with entrepreneurial intention? So, in the instance of Singapore and Malaysia, do new migrants or exchange students build entrepreneurial intention by being exposed to certain factors? For example, as mentioned previously, university environment and support has a significant positive relationship with attitude towards behaviour only in Singapore. So if Malaysian students do exchange in Singapore and return to their home country, will the exposure to Singaporean education increase their entrepreneurial intention? Another factor to be further researched is if personality traits can be measured or modelled and how this influences entrepreneurial intentions. The survey measures behaviour, which is what we do, whereas personality is how we do it, how we think and how we feel, which is consistent over time. In the instance of Singapore and Malaysia, do students who have resilience and vision develop entrepreneurial intention?
Additionally, how does family pressure play a role in entrepreneurial intention? For example, in the same way people feel the pressure to get a university degree when other family members have completed degrees, do people feel the same way about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial intentions when other family members own a business? So to conclude, reviewing the article, we believe the survey was an appropriate method to measure the research questions and hypotheses. However, the factors, while they have an interrelationship with one another, the scope of the factors are reasonably limited. As we mentioned before, there are other factors that can improve the R-squared value, and this we believe will improve the measurability of entrepreneurial intention and further fill the gap in the literature.